This Phillies Braves Game 4 edition of the MLB Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has just added Pick'em Scorchers, where you can win 100x. That's right, turn $5 into $500 in one game. Plus, every Sunday, they're giving away $100,000. Use the promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy for a 100% deposit bonus up to $500. We're also brought to you by Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SGP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code SGP. We're brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. And we're giving away $3,000 in our NFL Second Chance Survivor Contest, presented by Corey Pinkston and Barking Dog Productions. Free to enter. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. Welcome, everybody, to the MLB Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. My name is Malcolm Bamford, coming to you from very sunny Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England. Today is Thursday, October the 12th. Yeah, yes. Go on then. Mm-hmm. Yes, bosh. Thursday, October the 12th, and we are here to have a little look back on last night action and then give our best bets on the game for tonight between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Atlanta Braves. Joining me to give his thoughts today is Mr. Scott Reichel. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Looking forward to the only game left. It is a bit weird. We're already close to the AL and NLCS series, and we have not had a single winner-go-home game at this point. Feels like every series has been lopsided and has ended pretty quickly.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, there's been a lot of days off, which has benefited, I think, some of the, you'd call them weaker opponents, if you had to find a word. But yeah, we talked in the wildcard series how there was no lead changes, 2 lead changes in 8 games, I think. All the sweeps. Myself and Moonaf here, we talked about the AL Beast going 0-7. We've got another 100-win team to talk about tonight who was swept. So it's been an odd little postseason. This is what I still can't get my head around this about baseball. The 162-game season to then sort things out over a 3-game set. It's just absolutely baffling. But I absolutely love it as well. I completely adore it. These playoffs have been great. Last night, watching the Phillies-Braves game, it was just electric. You can feel the atmosphere coming through the telly. It was outstanding. So, yeah, looking forward to this game.
Do you want to hear a fun stat, by the way?
Of course.
So the teams that had the top 5 records in the regular season, the best records, best 5. You know what the record is in the playoffs?
Oh, it's got to be like 0-11 or something.
Or
maybe 1-12.
Yeah,
Atlanta with a 1 win.
Yep.
That's absolutely nuts. And again, that will spark a load of debate about the bye and things like that. But it can only be just one of those coincidental things, I think.
I think it's coincidental, but then again, Houston did win their series, and they had a bye. So,
yeah, that's it.
That's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, Houston last year had the best record. They had a bye. How'd that go? They lost 1 game in the entire playoffs. It depends on how you look at it. But I think conceptually the bye is pretty dumb because you kill any momentum a team has by not having them play baseball for about a week, which I think is kind of counterproductive. But at the end of the day, it's only an issue if the top seeds are losing. But if they're winning, nobody cares. So it's just a matter of all these top seeds losing at the same time. So the situation, the desire to change this rule seems more dire because every top seed is losing at the same time.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think people will just fit their narrative to whatever the results are. People who want it to be a good thing will find reasons, and people who want it to be a bad thing will find their reasons as well. The chat is why is no one at work today? What's wrong with everybody? You people go to work. Joan was first in asking about the time of Game 4. Joan Maxon, and we think, or Scott reckons, it's just to because there's only one game. So to fit right in the middle of the hotspot for both time zones, they've pushed this game back a little bit tonight, which makes sense. TBDB, Jay's here, Captain Insano, Adam G, joining for his first time. Love it. Thanks, Adam. Welcome. Who else is here? Christian as well. Andy B, Kaysen. Busy. Good to see everybody. Really appreciate it. Captain Insano on the Premier League show last night was telling us he's got hair like Elvis Presley, apparently, Scott. So that's something we didn't know about Captain Insano. A little nugget. Game 3 last night. I mean, the top story here, for several reasons, is the Arizona sweep of the Dodgers. A little bit baffling. Personally delighted to have the Diamondbacks to win the series. I've got my silly 66-1 ticket still running. Last night's game was slightly out of character in that we have the D-backs pigeonholed as this sort of small ball team. And last night they did all the scoring in about 2.5 minutes on 4 swings of the bat, 4 solo home runs. 3 of the players we continually name check. Gabe Moreno, who's been outstanding, Ketel Marte, Christian Walker. The only one who didn't hit the bomb was Corbin Carroll, and then Lourdes Gurriel chipped in with one as well. The D-backs move on have been outstanding. Myself and Moon have talked yesterday at length, really, about how they've done it. But we've been doing a little post-mortem on all the teams who've eventually died, and the Dodgers did last night. The main thread for me at the top of the series was the lack of a rotation. It wasn't they just had a poor rotation. They didn't even have a rotation. They had a stud, they had a rookie, and they had nothing else. And they're throwing out Lance Lynn in a game 3. And it absolutely cost them. To be fair, the bats never showed up. Freddie Freeman's been poor again. But they didn't have much down the order after that. So, how would you summarise what the Dodgers have been up to this week?
I don't know if you can really summarize it any other way by saying that it was a colossal failure. No matter how bad the rotation was, you got swept in a playoff series you had home field advantage in against a division rival that you've owned historically for the second straight year. Because you might remember they lost last year to the Padres, and they dominated the Padres in the regular season too. So, yeah, it's been a mess, with the exception of the COVID year where they won the World Series in a 60-game regular season, which I personally put an asterisk by because I think you kind of have to when you eliminate 100 games from the schedule. I think they've lost in the NLDS in 4 of the last 5 postseasons, including the bubble year. So in a real 160-plus game regular season, they have not made it out of the first round in several years at this point. It's embarrassing when your payroll's that big. Now, to go through the reasons why they got swept, you got to start off with the rotation. Statistically speaking, it was one of the worst series for a rotation I've ever seen. I believe the starting pitchers in that series had an ERA of about 25, which is unheard of. So nobody pitched well. Thinking about it, Kershaw didn't get through the first inning. Game 2, you saw Miller get shelled. He didn't even go 2 innings. And then Lynn pitched yesterday. I'm not even sure how long he pitched, but he gave up 4 home runs. So the whole rotation was useless, and it felt like the Dodgers were down multiple runs after 2 innings in every single game, which was the story. Not to mention the fact that your 2 best players, the 2 MVP caliber players, went a combined 1 for 21. So the lineup didn't do anything either. So I don't know what the Dodgers did well in besides the bullpen. The bullpen, I guess, was fine looking at it, but they were down multiple runs every single game. It was just a colossal failure all the way through.
I mean, if you wanted to play devil's advocate, the way you could flip it is if you look at the fact that Kershaw was the only starter from their opening day rotation who was fit. Yeah. And that lineup really is a little bit bad. I've said 3 times this week. Looks like a Pittsburgh Pirates lineup. You see, if you stick McCutcheon in there with Peralta and Hayward, you think, oh yeah, they're a 72-win team. So you could say it was mildly impressive that they did what they did in the regular season rather than just win 88 games. If they'd won 88 games, you would have said, yeah, that's about right for that lineup with Emmett Sheehan and Gavin Stone and Ryan Pepiot and whoever else they were throwing out. So,
I feel like for the lineup to touch upon what you said, the issue that you ran into for the Dodgers hitting wise, it's a top heavy lineup and the top didn't show up.
Yeah.
So the rest of the lineup wasn't any good, but you just were relying so heavily on Freeman and Betts, your two out of three MVP candidates. I mean, Freeman not realistically because Acuna's going to win the award anyway. But the point is you have two of the best three hitters in the entire league or National League, and they no-showed the entire series. And then you're relying on Peralta, and you're relying on Outman and a bunch of these other guys who just didn't have it. I know Dave Roberts, you can argue, is actually not to be fully blamed for this series because what was he supposed to do? You had no rotation and your lineup no-showed the entire series anyway. Having said that, pinch hitting Barnes in a pretty important spot against a lefty. I know Peralta is a lefty and you want to go righty-lefty there. Do you know Barnes' batting average against lefties this season?
You're going to tell me something like 136?
80. He had a batting average of 80, and you pinch hit him in an elimination game against a left-handed pitcher. So I think Dave Roberts is still a bad manager. I think pinch hitting Barnes there was hilarious, and he got through one pitch because he grounded out immediately. But I had to look up the Barnes numbers, but his numbers are that bad. He's a reverse splits guy. He was not even a good hitter in the first place. So that was Dave Roberts' slight contribution to getting swept. But there's nothing you can do. The whole team didn't show up, basically.
A much more routine win, you would say, is Houston completing the victory over Minnesota. The prop I gave out yesterday was the Kedy's K prop, and that lost. In the first inning, he looked fine. It was all ground outs and flyouts. And then he struck out 4 in a row down the middle, and that was the end of that.
Oh, you had the under. Okay. I thought you had
the that's what I mean. Yeah, it was no good at all. What we were concerned about yesterday was the Minnesota lineup, and that came to pass. They've had back-to-back 3-hit games, and that was something that Minnesota were always going to be capable of, and that wasn't. That was never going to be good enough, unfortunately. You know, occasionally, Scott, the gambling gods just come and hand you some money. I had one of these occasions last night. Just before the game, the TV announcer man was talking to Rocco Baldelli, and then they were asking him about Yordan Alvarez. And he said, under no circumstances will Joe Ryan be facing Alvarez second time through the order. Joe Ryan's, I was sitting on my laptop with Bet365 open. Joe Ryan's out prop was still at 14.5. And the manager's just told me he's going 11 max. Absolutely. And then, the only thing I thought could have gone wrong was, all right, if he strikes out 11 in a row and Minnesota are 14-0 up, they might just leave him in. They're very rare, because that's the sort of thing that would happen to me. If I unloaded everything on that bet, something would go terribly, terribly wrong. But there was just no...
Just to make sure, he got 6 outs, right?
Yeah. Well, so he was only ever going to go 11. And yeah, that was it. So he sat down after the second inning, and Baldelli went across and patted him on the head because he pitched quite well. He gave up this solo homer to Brantley, but he went okay. But yeah, it was just here, Malcolm, double your money, just double your pot for the weekend. They just handed me that money with a little, just a bit of right time, right place, seeing that little interview. Houston v Texas in the next round. Houston -142, Texas +120. Early thoughts, Scott?
For me, Houston owned them in the regular season, and of course I'm rooting for Texas because I think we're all just tired of Houston being in the World Series every year. Not even with the scandals from the years past, but they're in the World Series every year. It'd be pretty fun to see a Texas team that spent a lot of money during the offseason, had a bunch of injuries. Reminder, DeGrom and Scherzer both got hurt, and yet they kind of found a way to get there anyway. I'm rooting for Texas. I think it's fascinating. Houston is a pretty decent favorite in this series. I think Houston's like -130, -140?
-142, I've got.
That seemed pretty large, especially with Texas having some extra time off and how they've been dominant. They haven't lost a playoff game yet. So I do think Texas is pretty live to win the series, but for the price alone, I got to lean to Texas. Because getting plus money for a team that has not lost a playoff game yet, I think is too appealing. But the argument is Houston's been there before. They know what to do. My counterpoint is I don't think Minnesota's any good. I think Minnesota's a bad baseball team that was fortunate to face off against Toronto. So I'm more impressed by Texas not only winning every playoff game, but beating Baltimore, the #1 series in just a straight amount of games via sweep. compared to Houston beating Minnesota. Am I supposed to be impressed by that? I don't think Minnesota's good. Do you think Minnesota's good?
No, not at all. They're bang average. We know, yeah. They're a very middling MLB team.
So I'm rooting for Texas, and I'll take them at the price that they got. But I see probably a 6 or a 7 game series between two division rivals. I think Houston's going to find a way, and I'm going to be pissed. So I'll lean to Houston, but you can argue Bochy finds a way to win, and it wouldn't shock me either. But I see a coin flip series, so I think Houston's going to win at the end of it. But for the value in a coin flip, give me plus money.
I definitely would have had these odds closer together. That would be my main point. If I was making a line here, it would be very close to a pick. Absolutely. It would be even each of two. So, yeah, Texas a plus 120. We'll have a little look around that. Okay, let's get into Atlanta against Philly. I'll tell you first about Underdog Fantasy. A great way of playing alongside your favourite football team. Underdog has just introduced Scorchers. If you go 5 for 5 and pick them Scorchers, you can enjoy your spicy 100 times your money payout. The Underdog are extending the first deposit bonus. That's up to $500 there. That's carrying on. And $100,000 Sundays continue on Underdog Fantasy. 10 lucky players winning 10 grand each. Watch along, make your picks, maybe make a little cash over on Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. I've been having a little look at the London game for the weekend, and I quite like Spears. Is it Ty J. Spears? The second string running back for Tennessee. I think he might do some bits at the weekend. Game script seems to fit him whichever way you go, so that would be my play. Sign up with the promo code SGPN. Underdog will double your first deposit up to $500. Underdog Fantasy promo code SGPN. And Manscaped are back. And it's all about your beard this time. It's not Halloween. It's about your beard. The Handyman is the best way to get rid of your stubble. It's got a compact design, the next-gen skin-safe technology. The Handyman designed to give you a smooth finish without the mess of a traditional shape. So, yeah, throw your bad razors away. Use Handyman skin-safe technology to help reduce nicks and cuts. Finally feel confident when you're going out for a close shave. You get 20 different beard lengths in just one guard with your beard hedger. High-tech piece of kit. The thing to do is get your 20% off and free shipping with the code SGP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code SGP. For a look as sweet as candy, get yourself the Handy Man from Manscaped. Okay. Philly lead Atlanta 2-1. I mean, last night's game was just a load of fun. We handicapped it to death. Myself and Munaf, who was asking me earlier on if I went up the ladder. Kaysen or Trev, maybe. The small answer is yes. And right at the end of the Premier League show that we did last night, I threw out the Phillies ladder, and I've had quite a few messages this morning of bleary-eyed Englishmen who just backed it blind and woke up to their accounts full of money this morning. The only problem, I didn't go high enough up the ladder, Scott. I took them over 4.5, over 5.5, and up to over 6.5. So I left myself. There was a few rungs that I could have climbed that I didn't get up to, but it was a good win. Bryce Elder actually came out quite hot. He struck out 4 in a row, I think, but you did just kind of get the feeling it was coming. And when it came, it unravelled pretty quick. Bryce Harper was just electric. The Attaboy Harper thing made me laugh because it was probably not really true. Orlando Arcia was stood at shortstop being made to look a right tit when he probably had nothing to do with it in the first place. But there was just a feeling of inevitability about the Phillies putting them to the sword last night, Scott, the more I watched the game.
Well, the problem Atlanta runs into, we mentioned it going to the series, their pitching staff's a bit iffy, and we don't really like the rotation. So Elder was put in a spot where I'm sure a lot of people didn't feel great about because you're in Philly. Philly hadn't lost a home playoff game yet, and you bring in Bryce Elder. So you assume it's going to go poorly. Then he starts off decently. Atlanta strands a bunch of guys on base, but they're up 1-0. And you're like, okay, we're going into another inning. We'll see what Elder does. Then you see him start struggling, and then you see Harper's coming up. I would have pulled Elder early. It looked like Snitker was just waiting for Elder to fully implode before he finally pulled him. Then again, the bullpen for Atlanta wasn't good either, so it really wasn't a right answer. But Harper hit a bomb. Then he stared down Arcia, and then for fun, he hit another bomb later in the game. Then Castellanos also hits 2 separate home runs, so 2 separate Philly batters had 2 home runs in the game. Yeah, it just seems like Philly gets I don't want to say superpowers playing at home, but they're almost impossible to beat as far as I'm concerned when they play at home. So my real story for the matchup itself from Game 3 was, yeah, Phillies just dominated at home. That was really the only takeaway that I had, and I already knew that. I don't know if you had any other takeaways, but Elder struggling didn't totally shock me. Philly being great at home, once again, is the main, I think, takeaway from the playoffs so far, because I think it's the best home field advantage. We've seen all these top seeds lose regularly, and then you see Philly, who's just like, oh, we're at home. All right, we're just going to win and score 10 runs every time. So that's my main takeaway. It just seems like Philly, after beating Atlanta last year in the playoffs, it's the same story, isn't it?
Well, so that's the thing. So we go into a game tonight, a Game 4, the Phillies at home, and they throw us prices, Scott, of Atlanta minus 150.
It's 150 in Philly. 150 in Philly.
Ranger Suarez plus 130 with a total of 8.5. And okay, now what are they doing? I don't know. Someone's wrong. It's either all the public or it's all the books, because there can't be many people back in Atlanta here. I mean, the thing is, right, so you can make what the argument you'd make for Atlanta is solely on the numbers. If it was June the 12th, Scott, and we were doing a regular season show with 15 games, and we went through Spencer Strider and Ranger Suarez, you would handicap everything and you would probably pick Atlanta. But that's not what it is. That's not what we're handicapping here. Spencer Strider has been great. He's been really reliable. 32 games in the regular season, 19-5, 386. And it was just ticks. You could ticks in all the boxes here. He's fine on the road, 336 ERA. He's fine against Philly. Started 5 games this year against Philly. A 2.18 ERA. He was fine in the playoffs last week against Philly. 7 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run. Came on a solo homer, 2 walks, 7 Ks. There's no holes really in what Strider's done at all. Suarez, on the other hand, 4-6 with a 4.18 ERA, started 22 games. But there are holes in what Suarez was doing. He's got a 5.45 home ERA in 12 games started. He's given up plenty of runs, plenty of walks. And that leads me to my first. I've got 2 bets for this game. And my first one is a walk prop. Now, my player props haven't gone particularly well so far. He walked 1 against Atlanta last week in 3 2/3. And I get it that everyone's on a short leash. If he gets in any kind of trouble, that'll be it. Philly will just throw everything at Atlanta tonight. But in his 8 previous starts, Ranger Suarez had minimum 2 walks. And he can walk a couple here without getting himself in a world of pain either. He can walk 1 in the first. He can walk 1 in the third. You don't have to go mad. So we can get to 2 walks here. That's plus 140, which I think is an incredible price for over 1.5 walks for Ranger Suarez. 8 out of his last 9 it's cashed. My only issue would be the minute he walks someone, is he going to get pulled after 2 2/3 or something, which is possible. At the price, plus 140, I'm happy to take that risk. But, so I haven't spelled out the numbers. Like I say, June the 11th, on a Tuesday, you'd go through all that and you'd pick Atlanta. But we've just outlined everything that tells you why it's going to be Philly. Like that lineup's got an inevitability about it. Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Castellanos, all the rest of them, Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm, they're all just waiting to do something destructive. Atlanta have been completely outplayed here. They could already be out, actually. They got away with a game that they won. They just touched them off 5-4. Philly are locked in, and there's no substitute for what Harper and Turner bring you in front of that mad home crowd. We've seen it several times. We've seen it this year. We saw it umpteen times last year. Really, and last week, it's a good comparison game. Suarez 3 2/3. Then it was Hoffman, Dominguez, Alvarado, Kirkering, Strahm, Kimbrell. Kitchen sink thrown at them. 3 of those pitched last night, but Strahm only went 10 pitches. Dominguez went 11. It's not a problem. Kimbrell's fresh. Alvarado didn't pitch. The only one out of them might be Kirkering. But apart from that, you've just got to take Philly. I can't find another angle in. And this has been a sports handicap as well. It's not just looking at the numbers. It's sitting there last night, watching the game and soaking it up. And kind of, we were just waiting for Philly to explode. And I can't see much different happening again tonight, Scott. And certainly at the prices, you have to take Philly, I think.
I think the price is insane. Now, the main argument is, once again, Strider's on the mound, so you have to account for Atlanta getting the better starting pitcher and the length involved, because you're assuming Strider is not just going to pitch well, but he's going to pitch for a long time, because Strider is probably going to go, if he's on, 6 or 7 minimum, which should limit the damage for the bullpen. That's the argument. Do I care? Yeah. Not really, because Philly, once again, is just an absolute freight train at home. Now, Suarez was very good in game 1. He got pulled pretty early on when he wasn't even in trouble that much. I think he gave up a walk and an infield single in different innings, and that was the only 2 guys that reached base. So it seemed like nobody actually made hard contact against Suarez, but they pulled him anyway. So the argument is Suarez and the bullpen are going to have to try to outduel Strider. A reminder, Strider throughout the last couple of months of the regular season was fine, but he occasionally has blow-up starts. In fact, one of them was last year against Philly in a pretty similar spot, and he got buried. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen again. I think Strider's going to pitch fine. I'm not sure if he's going to be dominant, but I think he'll be fine. The point is, I don't think the odds makers, I don't know how you can truly account for how important this home field is. And it feels like they're not accounting for it at all. I think that Philly should be an underdog in this game because Strider is the better pitcher, so I'm not going to fully discount that. Minus 120, minus 115. I think it should be close to a pick'em in the spot because I really think the home field is that important. Not to mention the fact that Philly's lineup has been outperforming the best statistical offensive lineup in the history of the sport in the regular season. And Atlanta's lineup's been okay. It hasn't been amazing. Philly's offense has been nuts. So you can make an argument that Philly's got the better lineup based on recent form, not to mention the home crowd advantage and all. But I think Strider, even though it's actually kind of funny, his playoff and regular season splits against the Phillies. Strider in his career has an 8-0 record against the Phillies. 8-0 in the regular season. He's made 2 playoff starts in his career. He's 0-2 against Philly. So once again, it's just a weird type of dynamic there. I'll take Philly plus 130. It's an insane price for who is the best home team left in this field by a country mile. I'll take Philly in the spot for the value. I am going to lean to the under because I do think that if Strider pitches well, Suarez is going to get pulled early if he gets into trouble, and Philly's bullpen has been pretty good. That 8.5 does feel a bit high. I understand it because both the lineups are really good, but 8.5 in a game like this feels a little bit too high to me for both teams that should empty the kitchen sink. Philly should try to empty the kitchen sink too because there's no way you want to go back to Atlanta when you've been this dominant at home. I see a low-scoring game here. It might be a hot take, but give me some type of very competitive 4-2 final. I'll go with the under 8.5.
The money line prices here look like they've been sort of knocked out by AI. Look like they've been knocked out by a robot because these are the prices on the numbers. These are the prices without any feel, without any nuance of what we've seen and how things have been developing, how things have been unfolding.
You can tell these odds were made solely based from a computer and does not involve any type of subjectivity to it. Yeah,
this is the sort of thing where you don't see it anymore. I know I sound like an old man shouting at a cloud, but you used to you'd see different books or different, especially individual bookmakers who would have a stance on something, who would have, you could back one team at plus 130 somewhere and the other team at plus 120 somewhere because a bookie would have a feeling for it, and you don't get it anymore. But it's one of those things where I just think you have no choice. We've got a few picks being thrown out here by the chat.
Do you agree on the under, by the way, or do you like the over?
I think the under, just because, like you say, comp game last week, I think, what did Strider go last week? 7, was it?
He went 7, and then you saw Suarez pitch 3 2/3, but the bullpen was fine. It's just such an important game. I know it's going to sound obvious because it's game 4, and Philly's got a shot to win it, and Atlanta's got to go all hands on deck because it's an elimination game. It really just feels like after the offensive explosion that we saw yesterday from Philly, that the line for the total's a bit inflated when you're going to see both teams unload the entire pitching staff to try to end the series for Philly's purposes to win the series and for Atlanta's purpose to move it to game 5 back home. With such important stakes at play, I just can't take an over. I think you're going to see some over-managing with the bullpens, and I think you're going to end up seeing a lower scoring game.
This comp game last week finished 3-2, which was, like you say, 3 innings out of Suarez. then the kitchen sink, and Strider dealing in the other half of the inning. So, yeah, why wouldn't we see a similar game again?
Do you agree, by the way, that Philly will also empty the kitchen sink because they will do whatever they can to not head back to Atlanta?
Why would you not? There's no reason to risk taking it to a game 5. And like I say, they've done it before. They were six Phillies pitchers last night. Last week, in that game. And only a couple of them pitched. But Matt Strom threw 10 pitches. They threw him out again. That's no problem. Kimbrel was unused. Yeah, they'll all be ready. There'll be no issue with that at all. I don't think. Let me quickly tell you about Hall of Fame bets before we wrap this up. Helping you bet smarter this NFL season. Sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer parlays with Hall of Fame bets parlay optimizer. Get hit rates broken down by leg, expected probabilities, sort players by hit rate, find the value. So stop betting in the dark. Join 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame bets. So what we having a look at? Andy B, Philly team total over 4.5 is plus 176. Same bet that cashed pretty much for everybody last night. Yeah, TVDBJ pointing out the Strider, saying he wishes there was no fans there, and Philly are just going to get stuck into him.
That's probably not a good quote to say before you head into an elimination game against the Phillies in Citizens Bank. It's not a good look.
Adam G likes Pilars. I can't believe he's still going. Is that Kevin Pillar? Well, no, hang on.
I think he only goes against lefties. I think he's their right-handed bat specialist against lefties or whatever.
Atlanta do have this thing of having bench players that never, ever get a game. I think Charlie Culberson broke a record this year for being on the roster till something like the middle of June, and he played in like 8 games. Yeah. And you would have thought, because they were 9-0 up most of the season, they'd have just thrown him out. I can't believe he didn't get any at-bats. He just sat there. And I didn't realise he was still there till the DFA'd him in, like you say, back into July or something mad. Christian Garcia's gone for the 5-2 Phillies win. Yeah, we'll take that. Philly win and the under. We'll settle. We'll deal on Christian Garcia's. So, yeah, just to recap, my 2 plays are the over 1.5 walks for Ranger Suarez at plus 140. And dead simple, Philly on the money line at plus 130. Scott, you've got the Philly money line. Did you throw in the under? They were your two.
I think the 8.5 is just too high. I think, once again, looking at a matchup yesterday, I'm trying to think of the comp that I was going to compare it to. Which game was it? I mean, you can make an argument. It was kind of like the game from yesterday with the Astros against the Twins. You saw the Astros explode for 9 runs. Sonny Gray didn't have anything. That was just batting practice. The wind's blowing in, and you have 2 pitching options where Joe Ryan was barely going to go, and you had Urquidy, who I actually didn't mind. I thought Urquidy was going to pitch well. The total was 8.5 with the wind blowing in because the game prior had 10 runs.
Yeah.
It was just solely based on what happened previously instead of viewing the individual baseball game as a completely separate entity. And I feel like that's the same story that we got here, where you're looking at the Philly offense exploding for double-digit runs, and now everyone's going, well, we got to put it at 8.5. Do you? Like, Strider, statistically speaking, has still been a really good pitcher this entire season. 8.5, like that number just seems way too high to me. I'll go with the under there. Or I think looking at some actual props, I wanted to look at the pitcher props because I am tempted by the outs look on Ranger Suarez. He's at 11.5, which sounds about right because he went 3 2/3 in game 1. So that actually feels pretty accurate. Strider's at 17.5. At that point, I'd rather just take the under in like the first 5 because if Strider is going to go 6 innings, that means Philly's probably going to have 1 run. Because if he gets shelled early, they're pulling him. It's an elimination game. They're not going to stay with Strider. So I don't really see much value on the outs prop. I think that Suarez is where he should be. And Strider, once again, I think it's correlated. If he's going 18 outs, which is 6 full innings, Philly's going under the team total in the first 5.
Yeah.
Because if he gets shelled, then they're pulling him. So I think I'd rather take that look. But no, I don't really have much from a prop. Ozuna strikeouts is maybe worth a look because he has been striking out a lot. But I don't see much else. You? You have any
I
other
don't know.
props you want to mention?
No, apart from the Suarez walks, I don't know what the stats are on the under-over on the pitcher outs, but I feel like there's been a lot of unders because I've been burned by them.
Yeah.
3 or 4 times during the playoffs. I remember taking Bobby Miller. I can't remember who else I've taken over the last few days, but I've missed on all of them. The only one I won is last night when the manager literally came on the telly and told me that he was never going to make the number. So if the managers could do that,
I wish you told me that before the game. I would have had a couple.
I had like 20 seconds to get.
I was going to say I would have had a couple thousand on that if you told me that.
Yeah, he was stood on the mound with a ball in his hand. I got the market suspended a nanosecond after I got it on. So it was just one of those things. Thank you very much, Scott. That was lots of fun. There's nothing tomorrow. Whether this series will be live to go into Saturday remains to be seen. So at some point over the weekend, when everything else is set, myself and Scott and Munaf and Lonty and Dylan, some variation will be around. Thanks everyone who got in the chat. That was fun. Like I say, I don't know why aren't people working? I suppose it's modern society. People work at different times, Scott, they're allowed. But yeah, nice to see some new names and faces in there as well. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Scott. Good luck tonight with all your picks. If you've got what day is it? Thursday. I'll allow you to give me another NFL pick, Scott. Even though you're on very thin ice after last week. Have you got one for tonight?
Yeah, I'll go with McKinnon over in receiving yards. I think it's around like 11.5 or 12.5. He's historically destroyed Denver. He has 5 receiving touchdowns in the last 3 games, actually, and Denver defensively is terrible. But it's really bad weather expected in Kansas City. So I don't exactly expect many deep shots. I expect a decent amount of dump-off passes to try to, keep it relatively safe with the bad weather. McKinnon's been really good. We know that he's mostly a receiving back who catches a lot of short passes. I don't mind the over for receiving yards for McKinnon. Okay.
Just a little reminder that myself and Barry will be live for the pre-game London series on Sunday morning. I think it's at maybe 9 a.m. Eastern time. Bangers and Cash, for some reason, the oddly sausage-themed show that's been thrown together in the last 2 weeks. So if you want to come and get
it is 2 guys. So, having a sausage-based name isn't that bad.
Yeah. And it is quite sausage-heavy, Scott. It's about 10% NFL picks, 90% sausage chat. So that'll be on the Premier League feed. So go and find that, people. That'll be kind. Other than that, good luck with your bets. Have a good day. We'll be back at some point, and we will see you down the road. Cheers.